Welcome to the Binge Dietitian podcast. I'm Jonathan, and I'm here to help you end 24/7 food thoughts, binge eating, and actually enjoy life with food. This episode is for educational and informational purposes only, not to be substituted for medical or personalized advice. Check the link in the description for my recovery resources, and let's get straight to the episode. So if you struggle with binge eating, you've probably experienced the intense urge to binge eat. And when I'm talking about that urge, I'm talking about that in-between moment where you're trying to fight through the urge to not binge eat, trying to keep yourself busy, but you just keep on falling into the binge eating episode again and again and again, and it can be really difficult to overcome. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about this technique, this DBT skill or dialectical behavior therapy technique called urge surfing, that can help you manage your binge eating urges. So what is urge surfing? Well, it's a great way to stop binges on the spot. And I want you to know that this isn't something that will instantly end binges forever, but it's a good technique or a skill to manage intense urges and hold them off for now. So here's how it works. When you start to feel the urge to binge, you surf the urge by riding it out like a wave. And research shows that urges, they roughly last about 30 minutes and then they disappear. And instead of trying to fight it or resist it, you try to let it flow over you and eventually it'll pass. And by flowing, you can try to incorporate other activities, other doable but sustainable and reasonable activities to get you through this 30-minute period of ignoring or surfing this urge. And it might take some practice, but it's definitely worth it, and it's a really good skill to keep in your binge eating recovery toolbox. Let's go through the 4-step method on how to urge surf. So step 1, jumping straight into it. I want you to brainstorm different strategies you can use to stop being bored. The first step to avoiding urges to binge eat is to think of additional strategies that can help you cope with your emotions. So hypothetically, let's use this emotion. Let's say it's boredom. So what I want you to do is to brainstorm at least 4 to 5 ideas. Not just one idea, but 4 to 5, and I'll explain why later on. So here are some examples of some activities that could work for most people. But don't be afraid to come up with a few of yourself as well. So some ideas that can stop you from being bored, in this case, which could be a trigger for binge eating, is maybe go for a walk outside. Maybe call a friend or family member. Journaling. Going for a drive. It could be creating art, painting, coloring. Maybe taking a bubble bath or a long shower. Maybe cleaning around the house. Maybe listening to a podcast or music. Or maybe even watching your favorite movie or show. So once you have 4 to 5 ideas, we can move to step 2. So I want you to play out each strategy in your head. So, what will happen when you try this activity? How effective will it be? Do you anticipate yourself being bored, in this case, when completing the activity? How long will you be able to sustain the activity? I want you to be as realistic as possible. So, the reason why I asked you to find 4 to 5 ideas is, it might seem like a good idea to go for a walk. But what if it's raining outside or it's too dark outside and there's no safe path to walk to? Don't choose the activity that sounds the most effective. I want you to choose the activity that is the most effective based on your individual circumstances right at that moment. So which is why I want you to have 4 to 5 ideas in your toolkit. So in this thought process, it might look like this. So let's say you have idea number 1. It might be journaling. I think I could journal for a few minutes, but after that, I might get bored and probably might want to have a snack. Idea number 2, coloring in a coloring book. So let's say I just bought a few sets of pens, so I'm excited to use them. I think I could color for maybe 30 to 45 minutes without getting bored. Idea number 3, maybe baking a pie. It does sound fun, but maybe being around all the ingredients might be a bit too hard. I think it might result in a binge. And idea number 4, cleaning around the house. It sounds productive, but if you don't enjoy cleaning, then don't choose it. So I would go with idea number 2, which is coloring, because I know personally that would keep me very busy for 30 to 45 minutes. I can start a coloring book and listen to a podcast at the same time. And number 4 is to implement it for 30 minutes. And of course, everyone is different. Maybe the urge might disappear in 20 minutes. It might disappear in 30 minutes. It might even take a full hour in some rare cases. So it's important to mention that sometimes the strategy won't work. And that's okay. I want you to view everything as an experiment and try to be curious that if a strategy didn't work, why didn't it work? Did you not complete it for long enough? Was the activity itself not effective? So urge surfing might be very difficult, but it's shown by research time and time again to be a very helpful tool for managing intense urges, especially for people who are struggling with binge eating or other forms of disordered eating. There's lots and lots of research on urge surfing, and you can just check on Google or whatever browser you're on urge surfing. That is a very simple but yet effective tool, and it might sound very difficult at the start. The more you keep on doing it again and again and again, urge surfing, you're going to create a greater gap between the feeling of wanting to binge and the binge eating episode. You're increasing that gap, and you're trying to dissociate these automatic responses to having an urge and jumping straight to a binge. And the more you create this gap of binge eating urge and binge eating action, then it's going to make it much easier to recognize that, okay, I'm not a slave to my urges, and it could help make your binge eating recovery journey much, much easier. So if you found this episode helpful and you found the skill of urge surfing quite insightful and quite helpful, then I'd really appreciate it if you rated this episode as a 5-star rating. And if you want to end binge eating urges, then check the link in the description of this podcast to my one-to-one coaching, my webinars, my ebooks. You can also sign up to my binge eating recovery newsletter, where you'll get a free ebook called The Hunger Regulation Framework. So that's all in the link in the description of this podcast. So I'll see you in the next episode, and thank you for listening. Struggling with binge eating? Gain access to my exclusive self-paced binge eating freedom course found in the link in the description of this podcast. My course is everything I wish I knew when I struggled with binge eating, but it's all wrapped up into one easy to understand platform. You'll finally learn how to put an end to binge eating and put an end to food dictating everything you do, controlling your life. Access it now in the link in the description of this podcast.